Today, the tongue of the wise. As we continue through this study on word to the wise, the book of Proverbs is full of words of wisdom for us. Remember, I said last week that a proverb, what is it? A definition is the word comparison or a contrast. And we'll see that over and over again as we are contrasted the wise as opposed to the fool, the diligent compared to the lazy, the kind compared to the cruel. Over and over again, this book shows us the contrast, the good as compared to the evil, righteousness compared to wickedness. Over and over again, this contrast. And that's what we find in the book of Proverbs, a comparison or a contrast. But also, a proverb is a declaration of truth and wisdom. Oftentimes put in the form of a contrast, but ultimately that's what it is. It's a declaration of truth or wisdom. And what is wisdom? Well, wisdom is the proper application of truth. The proper application of truth. It's taking what is true and then putting it into practice. And I told you last week that there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. They aren't the same thing. I gave you that story of the kid I went to school with. I mean, he was a genius, but he wasn't very wise. He knew a lot up here. He could give a lot of answers. He could ace the test. But somehow this truth that he had up here didn't make its way down into his heart and then into his actions. I ended school with a higher GPA than him. Not because I was smarter, but because he was lazy. He wasn't diligent. And wisdom is taking truth and putting it into action. And so today, as we go through these words of wisdom, these declarations of truth, let's take it and get from our head to our hearts, and then specifically coming out today through our words. And the tongue of the wise. There may be no greater measuring tool of whether someone is wise or not. No greater tool than how they use their tongue. I don't do much cooking, but I've done some where I have to take a thermometer and it's got a little poker on the end and you stick it into the turkey or you stick it into the meat and then you let it sit there and then it'll take a little bit and it'll read the temperature of the meat down inside. Do you know you can measure the temperature, as it were, of what's down in your heart? Some people say, no, nobody knows what's in another person's heart. There is a temperature gauge. Do you know what it is? The tongue. The tongue. The tongue reveals so much about the heart condition of a person. And certainly it reveals whether you're a wise person or a foolish person. What was that noise? Have you ever asked that question? What was that? I ask that to Danae all the time. She'll ask it to me all the time. We'll be in bed at night. There'll be a noise. Did you hear that? Yeah. What was it? It was Enoch. Enoch right now climbs up on his bed and he's gotten to where he can shake. And if we don't make sure that the bed is far enough away from the wall, he starts shaking the thing and we hear, what's that? Oh, that's Enoch. He got up and he's shaking his crib. There are other things. What was that noise? Maybe you're outside and you hear a noise and what is it? And you look and There's a dump truck down the road. What's the noise? We hear the noise. We ask, what was that? And then we find the source. Oh, it's the dump truck down the street. It's a bird up in the tree. That simple principle is also true. When you hear the words that come out of your mouth, what was that noise? Well, that noise, that was a fool. That can reveal that. What was that noise? Oh, that was a wise man. The words that come out of your mouth. Others hear it. What was that noise? Oh, that was the noise of a wicked person. Matthew chapter 12 is where I want you to turn first. I know this isn't the book of Proverbs, but we're going to start here because Jesus proclaims this truth very, very clearly. In Matthew 12, verses 34 through 37, Jesus says, O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. So often when we think about Judgment Day, we think about our actions. But I believe that our words are primarily what will be brought into judgment. Again, the words reveal the condition of the heart. Jesus said, if you're evil, your mouth reveals it. If you're good, your mouth reveals it. What's inside comes out through the tongue. It is important for us to realize that. Very often, we can try to treat symptoms instead of causes. A good doctor doesn't just deal with symptoms. He sees the symptom and then he tries to deal with the root cause. And as we go through these Proverbs today, maybe you'll see some symptoms of foolishness in your own heart because of what you say. Don't think, well, I'm just going to fix my tongue. No. Say, oh God, this is really where my heart is. I need you to change my heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Proverbs 16:23 says, the heart of the wise teacheth or instructs his mouth, and addeth learning to his lips. Solomon is just affirming again the same thing Jesus is saying. It's the heart that informs the tongue. Now this morning I'm going to bring out three things. We'll be looking at the tongue of the wise, and so often we'll see what the tongue of the wise is by comparing it also to the tongue of the fool, okay? But the tongue of the wise, three things. And the book of Proverbs, there are just verse after verse after verse after verse. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I've tried to look at them and say, okay, what are the main themes that's coming out about the tongue of the wise? And I have three. I'm going to tell them to you, and then we're going to go through them one by one. First of all, the tongue of the wise is careful. The tongue of the wise is truthful. And thirdly, the tongue of the wise is helpful. It's careful, it's truthful, and it's helpful. First of all, the tongue of the wise is careful. And by that, I mean that it uses discretion. It knows when to speak and when not to speak. It doesn't always run its mouth. Maybe you've heard this illustration. I think it's cute. It says God gave us one mouth and two ears, so that we'll do twice as much hearing as we do talking. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it certainly is principled there. In James, it says, let every man be swift to hear and slow to speak. The tongue of the wise is careful. Proverbs 29:20, it says, seest thou a man that is hasty in his words? There's more hope of a fool than of him. Hasty. Quick to speak. More hope of a fool than of him? I don't even know how that's possible, that there's more hope for a fool. I think that this basically shows that it's the bottom of the barrel. Your words will get you into trouble faster than anything. Don't be hasty with your tongue. Proverbs 17:27-28, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, or uses them sparingly, carefully. And a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise. And he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. This has always been an amazing proverb to me, that even a fool can look like a wise person if they'll just be quiet. We need to be careful. To be quick to hear and slow to speak. I have found this fault in me many times, even in conversation with others. I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm trying in my brain to form my response instead of just listening. Let me just hear what they have to say, and then I can think about it and then give a response. Rather than already, and I've done it, I've been like chomping at the bit to tell them what I want to say. You know what I'm saying? Anybody been there? You're so hasty to speak instead of listen. Recently I was with someone, and I noticed something about this person, that they were a very good listener. They not only were listening to me when I talked, but I recognized they're listening to other people when they talk. Really just listening, hearing them out, rather than just trying to jump in. Proverbs 10:19, it says, in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The multitude of words there wanteth not, there's no lack of sin. We probably sin the most with our tongue. But refraining your lips is wisdom. Proverbs 13:3 says, he that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction. Keep it. Whenever I read verses like this, he that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, I think of it as like a door. If you have a city or a castle, that door, that huge gate is shut tight, and maybe that big wooden beam brought down to lock it. And when that door is secure and shut, it's safe from the enemy that tries to penetrate. Keep the door of thy tongue. That's the idea of thy mouth. Keep it shut. And if you keep your mouth shut, there's actually safety and protection that comes to your life. Versus just opening wide that gate and just letting anything, just come on out. The other day, I went somewhere. I won't tell you where. But I went somewhere, and it was a place of business, and I was picking up something, and all of a sudden the person that was helping me, I didn't hardly say a thing, and they just started going, just rattling, and I just listened, and I thought, wow. Now, I don't know if I thought about it in these terms, but my thought was, this guy's really foolish. And he just kept going and going. Wow, this guy's really foolish. And by the time I walked away, I was like, wow, that guy is really, really foolish. I didn't even hardly say it, but he just... And I thought, what are you even talking about? But he lacked discretion. He didn't keep his tongue. I guess just whatever was on his mind, he was just saying it. Don't just keep the door of your mouth wide open. The city is in danger of destruction if you do. Proverbs 18:13 says, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and shame unto him. That's another one. Have you ever done that? Many times I have. Seems like I probably do it the most with my wife. She'll start saying something to me, and I think I know where she's going, and I'll jump in. And she's like, no, that's not what I was asking you. Oh, what were you asking me then? Well, why don't I just wait and hear what she's asking or hear what she's saying? If you answer a matter before you hear it, it's shameful. Hear it out. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. Now, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but I'll give you my thought. You ever seen a ring or a piece of jewelry? Maybe it'll be all silver, and then they'll take a diamond and they'll stick it right in the center with these things, or they'll take it, the gold band. When I got the wedding ring for Danae, it's all gold, and then it's got these diamonds, set inside the gold. One time we realized one of those diamonds was a little loose, and was scared. We didn't want that thing to fall out. It sits right in there, and it's just beautiful. The kind of the way that diamond stands out surrounded by the gold. I think this is the idea here, but not diamond and gold, but gold and silver. Apples of gold in pictures of silver, just right. Ornamental. Is a word fitly spoken. Yes, we need to keep our tongues. Don't always try to say something. Listen. But then there is that discretion, or having a careful tongue that knows when it is the right time to say something. There are times that it is right to speak, just fitting. Brings glory to God and brings help to others. And to have that discretion. Proverbs 15:23, a man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good it is. A word spoken in due season. Having a careful tongue, yes, knowing when not to speak, but then knowing when it is the time to say just the right thing. Just the right thing at just the right time. You ever had someone do that for you? Say just the right thing at just the right time? I have. To be careful with your tongue isn't only a self-preservation that says, well, I don't ever want to get in trouble, so I'll never open my mouth. Because there are times that people need to hear something. There are times, especially as the children of God, that we have the words of life, the wonderful words of life in the gospel of Jesus Christ. There certainly is no more fitting word than the Word of God. And when the Word of God is on our tongues and we can share that with other people, but even that, we need to make sure we share the right scripture at the right time. Some come in with the sword of the Spirit and they just start swinging every which way and maybe do more harm than good. I think of this a lot in terms of Peter. Do you remember Peter? Peter was quick to speak. The best illustration of that was the Mount of Transfiguration. Here he was sleeping. He wakes up. He sees Jesus and Moses and Elijah in glory. And then Peter says he didn't know what to say. So he said, bad thing to do. If you don't know what to say, then don't say anything. But Peter didn't know what to say, so he just said, well, Lord, shall we build 3 tabernacles? One for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. And then it says this, a big cloud came and covered him up, and a voice from heaven says, this is my beloved Son, hear him. And I just think that the Lord was saying, Peter, be quiet and listen to what he has to say to you. Peter didn't know what he was talking about. There was no need to set up a shrine up on top of that mount. Isn't that what false religion does? Anytime there's a thing, we got to build a shrine there so people can pilgrimage up to this spot. In fact, Jesus didn't even want this story to be told until after the resurrection. He doesn't want us building shrines. And certainly it was foolishness. Moses and Elijah were not on equal plane, equal footing with the Lord Jesus Christ. But he didn't know what to say, but he said it anyways. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Have you ever gone into a situation like going to visit someone who's just lost a loved one? What do you say? Some people say the dumbest things. The other day, this lady said something. She said, I don't know if it was the right thing to say because her neighbor's husband had passed away. She said, but at least it was a laugh, and that's all you can do at times like these. And it was very just insensitive and light-hearted in the time when somebody's heavy. That's not a word fitly spoken. That's not a word in due season. And the truth is, most of the time when you go to visit someone who's in sorrow, be like Job's counselors at first. It says at first they just sat there and they said nothing. And then once they started talking, out their mouth came an explosion of foolishness. The best thing they did was just sit there and be with him. Job didn't know what to say. He didn't have anything to say. And his friends shouldn't have had anything to say either. They should have just been there with him. Just be there. When my brother passed away, it was a shock and a grief to us. Not only in the accident did he die, but the neighbor friend around the corner whose family attended our church as well, he died in the accident. So 2 deaths in the same little church, in the same little neighborhood, all on the same day. And we had people coming over the whole week. They'd come over. And I remember one person, I'll never forget this. They came over to the house, and they had gone to the store and bought a bunch of styrofoam cups and plates and napkins and throwaway silverware. And they just walked into the house with all this throwaway stuff, and they said, well, you won't have to worry about washing dishes for a little while. Just use these. And every person in my family, I think, well, I say every person, but I remember several people saying, that was so just helpful. They didn't come in pontificating words about the deceased, They just brought in some paper plates. And that meant so much and was so helpful. The tongue of the wise is careful. Number 2, the tongue of the wise is truthful. The tongue of the wise is truthful. Proverbs 12:22 says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. Oh, this is a contrast, if ever there were. A lying lip versus the one that deals truly or truthfully. Okay, before God, it says that the lying lips is an abomination. In the Bible, when you read the word abomination, it's the strongest word to describe disgusting. Something that's just putrid. One time, when I was younger, I had a bicycle, and down in between there was a slot where there went a water bottle. Anybody have a bicycle like that before? Well, I like water, but I also like some juice. So I put some, I don't know if it was grape juice or orange juice in there one time, and I put it in a water bottle in my thing. Well, I didn't drink it all. And several days later, I was riding my bike again. I thought, hey, I still got some juice in that thing. Do you know what that was? Foolishness. And I reached in as I was thirsty, and I opened that little cap, and I took a big old swig, and I mean, I can only imagine what it looked like. It was an abomination. It was disgusting. That juice had been sitting in that hot Florida sun, and just, man, it gave me no appetite for alcohol. I thought, if that's what alcohol is fermented stuff. This is horrible. This is disgusting. It was an abomination to my lips. That's how God feels about lying lips. When you lie, it just disgusts him. But the contrast, they that deal truly are his delight. This is the polar opposite. God just, a nice glass of lemonade or orange juice or grape juice or a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you delight in, a sweet tea. I don't know what your delight is, but God's delight is someone who speaks the truth. Proverbs 12:19 says, "The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment." The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. This was interesting. Yesterday I was listening to a brief history of World War II, and the man who was giving the lecture, he pointed out something that I'd never thought about. During World War II, you had the Allied forces against the axis of evil. And he said one of the main reasons that the Allies won. Do you know the axis of evil brought about 75% of the deaths, and yet they lost? He said, how can you be 75%, in a sense, in war, successful, and then yet get beat by the 25%? And he said one of the reasons is because all of the members in the axis of evil, Hitler and Mussolini, and they were just liars. And because they were liars, they couldn't even trust each other. And they didn't trust each other, so they wouldn't share information. And because they wouldn't share information or share technologies, he said they were no match to the Allied forces, though we were in league with Stalin, but he talked about that a little bit. But anyways, that the Allied forces were trustworthy men, and they would trust each other and share plans and coordinate together. And because of that, they experienced victory. The lip of truth shall be established forever. In the end, of course, the eternal end. This is true, but it's even true on this earth to a degree. The lying tongue is but for a moment. Just a little bit. Proverbs 19, verse 5, it says, "A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape." Proverbs 21:28, "A false witness shall perish, but the man that heareth speaketh constantly." A false witness shall perish. Now, Proverbs 11, verse 13, it says, "A talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter." Proverbs talks a lot about the talebearer. Do you know who a talebearer is? One who bears tales. They carry around tales, gossip. Gossip. They can't be trusted. You share something with them, and then they go share it with someone else. It may even be a truth, but they can't be found trustworthy with that truth. They spread it. And usually it becomes distorted and twisted. Proverbs 20:19, "He that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets, therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips." Flattery is a form of lying and deception, the same as a talebearer or gossip. I heard it years ago, and it was very helpful to me, that a gossip says to your behind your back what they would never say to your face. And a flatterer says to your face what they would never say behind your back. That's so true. A flatterer in front of you, "Oh, you're wonderful." And then when that guy's a bonehead, you know. They say to your face, they would never say that behind your back. But then a gossip, they'll say behind their back behind your back what they would never tell you up front. Both are destructive and not truthful. We are all guilty of this in some degree or another. We need to search our hearts. If I feel at liberty to tell this to someone else, would I do it if that person was standing there with me? If I can't, then there's a good chance I shouldn't even be saying it. Proverbs 24:28, be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. Oh, there's a lot here in the Proverbs about your relationship even to your neighbor. I see this, and even in my business, I had one neighborhood I went in, and I was cleaning at this man's house, and he says to me, hey, you see that house just 2 or 3 houses down? I said, yeah. It's like, don't trust that guy. And he starts sharing with me all about this man. That man apparently had built up a bad reputation. But sometimes neighbors like to talk about other neighbors. Go about and stir up people against other people. Pit this person against that person by spreading a lie. Maybe it's not an outright lie, but it can be what we would call a deceptive word. Sometimes you can have words that you say that are in a technical sense true, but they're said in such a way as to deceive, which is really a deception. Don't deceive with your lips. The tongue of the wise is truthful. Speak the truth. Using discretion, being careful. But speaking the truth. Now the third and final point. The tongue of the wise is helpful. It's helpful. Proverbs 10 verse 11 says this, the mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Life versus violence. Violence destroys and then ultimately kills. Versus that which is a well of life. You know, that's the idea, is the fountain of life, you know, which preserves. You know, people are always in the pursuit of the spring of life. You know, if we can just find the fountain of youth, you know, to just keep us young forever. You know what it says keeps people full of life? Is the mouth of the righteous. Are your words used to destroy others or to bring life to them? Proverbs 15 verse 7, it says, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge. That is, the wise wants, as we saw last week, they pursue knowledge and wisdom to get it for themselves, but then they use their tongues to disperse it to other people. Not in arrogance as a know-it-all, lacking discretion, but if God has helped you, freely you've received, freely give. Proverbs 10:21, the lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want or for lack of wisdom. Some translate this as this, that the lips of the righteous nourish many. That is the idea. brings nourishment. It's helpful. I think this is important, especially when we are dealing with lost people or even people that are in error. We can think, well, I need to just speak the truth. But I need to make sure that even my truth speaking is with the intention of helping them. To help them. To feed them. To bring nourishment to them. Because you can take a truth and use it to cut somebody down and try to destroy them. No. It needs to be to nourish others. Proverbs 31:26, talking about the virtuous woman, says that she openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. Ladies, here specifically to you. This really is set against the ungodly woman that we'll find throughout Proverbs. It's brash and with her tongue. She's loud and boisterous. But the virtuous woman she's not that. She's not loud and boisterous. But when she opens her mouth, wisdom comes out. And there's something that governs her tongue. It's called the law of kindness. That's quite a phrase. Does the law of kindness rule your tongue? Some of the most vicious things happen with the tongue. In James, he says it's an unruly evil full of deadly poison. And some people just let their tongues fly with this poison that just destroys. Proverbs 16:27 through 28, it says, an ungodly man diggeth up evil, and in his lips there is a burning fire. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. Wow. This is not helpful at all. Digging up evil, finding some occasion against someone else, and then going about to stir up strife and separate people. Anyone have someone like that in your family? Anyone ever had someone like that in your neighborhood? Anyone ever had someone like that in your church? I've seen it, even in the household of faith in a church. It can be just one person, and their tongue is set on fire of hell, and they go throughout the church, and they just pit people against others, and just cause contention. I was a part of a church one time, and one of the older men, I was talking to him, and he referenced one of the ladies. He said, "See that lady over there?" I don't know if she was actually there or if he just referred to her. He said, "I have told my wife to stay away from her. She is a gossip and a busybody, and she just causes trouble." And I sat back then and I watched this lady over the years. And she did. She'd just go around, just starting fires here and starting fires there, and with her tongue. And eventually that lady turned her tongue on me and tried to destroy me. Don't use your tongue to sow strife. Proverbs 17:9. He that covereth a transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth a matter separateth very friends. Maybe you've heard it in the New Testament. Love covers a multitude of sins. But when you love somebody, you don't go and air out their dirty laundry, do you? I think in our digital age with the internet, people can so freely type it and send it out to the world as they're speaking about other people. Certainly there is a time in which wickedness needs to be uncovered or exposed. I'm not denying that. But there is also a time in which love deals with sin, but then doesn't just go repeating it to try to destroy someone's reputation or character. Love needs to govern even over what my tongue says. Proverbs 18:6, a fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calleth for strokes. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calleth for strokes. When I was in the jail ministry, every weekend I'd go to jail and spend time with those guys. I discovered pretty quickly the root cause of most of their incarcerations. Substance abuse and pride, which cannot keep its tongue nor any other part of its body. When you can't control your tongue, you can't control your fists. It's just that simple. And that's the root cause of almost 100% of incarcerations. Substance abuse, which then leads to all sorts of crimes, and then just pride. You're not going to say that about me. They're not going to get away with that. And then it gives place to just out of control tongues, which then lead to brawls, to fights. I guarantee you that the majority of physical fights could be avoided had people just kept their mouth shut. Almost 100% of the time. But a fool, he can't do that. He gets into fights. He even gets into fights that have nothing to do with him. And before it's over, he's getting strokes or slapped or beat up. Hold your tongue. Proverbs 16:13, righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right. Whoa, this is helpful, isn't it? Don't you think that Pharaoh found this to be true with Joseph? He says, is there any man in the realm, in the kingdom, that has wisdom like this man? And he wanted him to be there. Don't you think that King Nebuchadnezzar had this true about Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and then Darius, the same thing, how they valued Daniel, promoted him up into the kingdom because they could trust his words. But the same is true both as a king and in any form of leadership. You value those who you can trust and who will speak the right thing, what you need to hear. Proverbs 15:4, it says, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. That idea of a breach in the spirit is just to break down. Think of it, the wall just collapsing. The wholesome tongue is a tree of life. Again, it's a life. But the perverse tongue, it just breaks down and destroys. Proverbs 15:1, this is one. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. This is a difficult one. You've got someone who's already filled with wrath, or they're already mad. What are you going to do? Well, you can stir them up and make them even more mad. Think about that. with a bee's nest, bee's hive. You see the bees going? If you take a stick and hit it, it's not going to help. No, if you find yourself there, you're like, okay, just be calm. Don't make any sudden moves and just back away. Same is true with a person. They're upset, they're mad, and then that starts coming at you in the form of words, and your natural inclination is just to let them have it right back, and you know what you're doing? You're taking a stick and beating the hornet's nest. In the end, it'll bring trouble to both you and them and make a mess of the situation. If you want to diffuse it, if you want to calm it, then speak softly. Not harshly as they are. So these words, the words of the wise are careful. Know when to speak and when to be quiet. And most of the time, it's being quiet. The words of the wise are truthful. There's no deception. There's no lying. There's no gossiping and flattering. It's honest. And the words of the wise are helpful. They're used to build up, not to tear down. To calm situations rather than inflame them. To try to be a peacemaker and bring people together rather than strife. Words of strife to separate them. It helps. So as you examine your own heart through your tongue, as I say, the answer is to get on your knees and say, "Oh God, tame my tongue by changing my heart." In James, it tells us that no man can tame the tongue. You can't do it. No man can. But God can. And He does it by getting to the root, by changing the heart. I close with this. Yesterday, the kids and I were reading in the Psalm, or actually in Proverbs, and we were talking about the potter. The potter. And I was asking them about it, and they didn't know a whole lot, so I pulled up a couple of videos to show them how a potter works. He's got this lump of clay and sticks it on this wheel, and the wheel is spinning around, and then the potter takes his hand and he starts forming it, and he's constantly putting water on it, forming it, putting water on it, forming it. And then we went to Isaiah, how it talks about this. That He is the potter and we're the clay. And He forms us. And I was telling the kids, I said, that's it. And our heart needs to be like that song where it says, "Change my heart, O God. Make it ever true. Change my heart, O God. May I be like you. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, O God, make it ever true. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you." Our answer is to get on our knees before God in prayer and say, "Form me, change me, make my heart a heart that is careful and discreet. Make my heart a heart that is truthful. Make my heart a heart that is helpful." And then the byproduct will be my tongue will be careful and truthful and helpful. Whatever comes out of through your words is just a revealer of the condition of your heart. The only one that can transform the heart is God. As He takes the water of His Word and forms us and makes us into a vessel that brings honor to Him. So, yield yourself to the potter's hands. And as you go through your life and things come out, oh man, what did I say? Get back on the wheel and say, God, change that. Change me. He can. He will. He wants to. Produce in me wisdom